Welcome, all you Zoomers, all my Zoomers tonight. This is great. Here we are at 75 Mechanic Street, south end of Rockland, Sharps Point South, with the home of the old snow shipyard and the home of the Sail Power Steam Museum, finest maritime museum on the south end of Rockland. Well, you might dispute that a little bit, but I had a friend of mine and I sent him around town, and he went to all the maritime museums in South Rockland. And he came back and said, absolutely, ours is the finest one in South Rockland. So you got to come and see it. Come and check us out. First chance you get. We're right down here on the south end. I'm Captain Jim Sharp. My wife and I started this museum just 16 years ago. I flunked retirement, and here we are uh, with a fantastic museum, a 5-star on TripAdvisor. And well, right away we'll move right on. This captain's quarters. Got a great program for you, Mapping Ocean Stories. Captain Jen Feeney here. My gosh, she's a licensed captain, and she's got a lot of salt water in her veins, and she's going to be your hostess tonight and tell you all about our presentation, wonderful presentation on mapping the stories of the ocean, these lobster fishermen, and all of the fishing stories. Captain's quarters number 38 here. We've done 38 of these captain's quarters. And down below, you can see all these old motley looking people. They're old, rusty looking, they're all sea captains, every one of them. They were sea captains of the Maine Windjammer fleet out of Camden and Rockland. And all of those windjammers, well, there are quite a few of them going over the bar now, but there's still a few of them around. And I'm there right in the front row. What do you know about that? We're going to move on and tell you about Mapping Ocean Stories. This is collaboration between the First Coast Maine Sea Grant and College of the Atlantic and the Island Institute. Ah, we're going to get all these stories from these old fishermen. You know, fishermen always complain about the fishing. The fishing's always bad. If it's a beautiful day and the sun's out and the lobsters are jumping over the rails, they'll still complain about it. But that's because I think they love it. They just love fishing, and they love being their own boss, and they love being out there on these in their own boats, and it's a freedom that they have over their own responsibility at that time, and it's great. So we're going to have get some of those secrets out of them and archive it. We're going to let the voices come and hear the stories of the past, and we're going to celebrate it by documenting it and putting it into the communities. Find out about the communities they call home. Anyway, I'm Captain Jim Sharp, and I'm going to hold things back here a moment and have the commercial. My God, here's the commercial. We'll try and make this as painless as possible. But we got to tell you about the Sail Power and Steam Museum and all the great things that we do here. Right here, up in the upper left there, that's our old museum building. It's right solid full of memorabilia now. It's incredible stuff we have in there. We have Nathaniel Bowditch, original backstaff, and a wonderful navigation section where you can take a section and you can look up on the wall and grab the North Star and bring it down to the horizon and get our latitude, 44 degrees, 5 minutes. Right there, you can do it yourself and learn how to use a sextant. We have, of course, a great Arctic exhibit. We have polar bear skulls, polar bear heads, I should say, that are complete. We have narwhal tusk, and we have the Schooner Bowden model. Schooner Bowden did 26 voyages above the Arctic Circle. We tell all about his experiences, Donald McMillan being lost in the Arctic back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. What an incredible array of things. We have a steam house with 12 running steam. Oh, I could go on and on ad infinitum, but you guys don't have time for all of that. Over in the upper right, you can see a schooner in our front yard. We thought, gee, we need a little more ambiance. And we had this schooner that was donated to us, a cement schooner, so we can dig a hole and stick it in plant it right in the ground, right in the front of the museum. You can go aboard there, you can stand at the wheel on a schooner and have your picture taken, and I guarantee you, you won't get seasick. She doesn't rock no matter what. Down below in the lower right, that's our new building. We had to build a new building. We were running out of space. So a couple of years ago, we finished that building. That's our main entryway. You go in the main entryway. The first thing you see is the vessel that the Light Horseman, it's called, the vessel that discovered Penobscot Bay in 1605. George Weymouth came over here and the Archangel, and he brought this vessel, and they rowed all the way up to Fort Point, and they pointed out all the wonderful harbors and where the mountains meet the sea and all the wonderful assets of Penobscot Bay. So come and check that out. Over in the lower left, you see the launching of the Keating. This is one of the snow shipyard vessels with a man standing up on the cross trees on the mizzen mast and another man up on the mainmast there, riding the vessel in their first trip into the briny, great big four-masted schooner. They had such an enormous amount of vessels that they built at the snow shipyard. But I want to tell you, our skiff program, most important, our skiff program. What a wonderful thing this is. I'd like to get rid of a little bit of that black stuff on the top there. But I guess maybe I can get rid of that thing too. There, that's probably better. SKFF, Sail Kids for Free. We take kids from 8 to 14 years old, never been in a boat before. Some of them don't know anything about rigging a sail or grabbing a tiller. And look over in the upper left there, they're setting the sails on these little Optimus prams, tiny boats, just one guy to a boat. First thing we do, put their telephone in a drawer and shut the drawer. No computerized stuff here. They got to jump in the boat and they got to take it. We push them away from the dock. We teach them how to sail it and they soak it up like a sponge. The first day, they're getting the hang of it. The second day, they're out there and they're starting to really sail these boats back and forth. Their buddies in the next boat alongside. So, of course, competition is the name of the game. And when the competition takes hold, then they try to beat their buddy in the next boat. That's where they get so interested they just can't think about anything else. By Wednesday, they're turning the boats over, writing them up again. Thursday, they're really getting proficient. And by Friday, down at the bottom there, they're all in a great lineup going out around the buoys in Rockland Harbor, sailing in competition. We do a class of about 12 kids, 12 boats, and just one kid to a boat. And we graduated 150 kids last year. And the year before that, we graduated over 500 kids in the past 3 years. And it's really an exciting thing, all supported by you guys, all supported by everyone. If there's somebody there speaking, I wish you would mute so that we don't interrupt the program here. We also have adult sailing. If you're a sailor, we'll get you out in a boat and we'll help you hone your skills so that you become a much more proficient sailor. We use old boats mostly. Here are the two white ones in the upper center there. The one on the left is a Friendship sloop, 1920s. We have two Friendship sloop, 1920s Friendship sloop. Actually, one of them is 125 years old. And on the left, that's a Herreshoff 12 and a half, very much a classic vessel. These are gaff headers, and if you can sail a gaff-headed boat, you can sail any boat. So this is the way we do. That boat on the upper right there, that's one of our friendships, Persistence, taking people out in it. The one in the center, Blackjack, she is 125 years old. She's the oldest friendship sloop in the world, built by Wilbur Morse back in 1900. And she's in beautiful condition and a famous classic boat to sail. Up in the upper left, you can see our Sunday music jam. Everybody gathers together. They bring their instruments. We had 22 musicians there last Sunday, and everybody in the audience singing the old songs. It's all free. Everybody has such a great time. Down below, across the bottom, you can see we have our rent. We can rent a tent to you, and I can try and get rid of that nonsense down there at the bottom. Can't do that either. There we go. And over in the center left down there, you see everybody gathered together having a lobster meal with a bluegrass band playing for their luncheon in the background. If you'd like to rent a tent for your any kind of a wedding or just a luncheon or anything you'd like, contact us. We'll be glad to set you up right on the beach there, right in Rockland Harbor. It's pretty exciting. All of these things, of course, we're a nonprofit, and all of these things depend on you all to help us get through it. And we thank you very much. Any encouragement you can give us, whether you're want to volunteer or whether you would like to give us a donation, we would be most grateful. So now, get this to move ahead. Some reasons doesn't seem to want to do that. Now let's go on to our program. I'd like to get Jen Feeney here, Captain Jen Feeney. Kipper, are you there? Are you ready to jump in?
And indeed I am. Thanks,
Um,
Jim. And
I'm gonna, I'm gonna,
tonight, oh,
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and you're in charge. It's your watch.
okay. Thank you, Captain. Tonight we are thrilled to have two very dynamic team members of the Mapping Ocean Stories project. We have Galen Koch, who is an audio journalist, an oral historian, community storyteller, working to preserve and amplify the voices of Maine's coastal communities. She teaches at College of the Atlantic and is the founder of the First Coast, a mobile storytelling project traveling along Maine's coastline. And she's also the lead producer of Mapping Ocean Stories, working to collect and archive and share the oral history of Maine's coastal communities. And we also have Dr. Laurie Baker, who is a data scientist, a marine biologist, an educator, and her work bridges storytelling, spatial analysis, and community resilience. She's a former professor at College of the Atlantic and a current professor at Bates College, where she teaches data science and statistics. So ladies, we have a really dynamic presentation. I know that your introduction could be far more extensive. You have done so many interesting things, but if we want to hand over to you and see if you want to bring us into the mapping of ocean stories.
Sure. Thanks, Jen. I am Galen Koch. I'm gonna start this and actually share my screen with you all. I will be playing a little sound. If it's hard to hear, grabbing a pair of headphones can sometimes be really helpful because sometimes the sound is a little, it can be weird on Zoom. So if you have headphones and you want to grab them while I'm speaking at the beginning of this presentation, feel free. All right, let's see. All right, we've got a slideshow, right?
Indeed.
Confirmation. Okay, great. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to start this presentation, and then Laurie is going to take over. I'm Galen Koch. I'm a radio producer, as Jen said, and I'm also the Coastal Community Engagement Lead and Researcher at College of the Atlantic. And in that position, I teach a couple courses at COA, but I also am one of the co-leads of the Mapping Ocean Stories project. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of Mapping Ocean Stories and how it came to be at COA. COA is College of the Atlantic. I'll use COA a lot during this conversation. And I'm going to talk really specifically about the audio work that our students do. And then I'll tee it off to Laurie, and she'll talk about some of the mapping components, which is more data heavy, really, really interesting stuff that we're doing with oral history interviews as part of this work. So Mapping Ocean Stories is, let me see. Okay. Mapping Ocean Stories is a project that started in 2016. It was an idea that was hatched between Maine Sea Grant, College of the Atlantic, and Island Institute at the time. And it originally started at COA as a class. So that year, actually in 2017, two staff members from Island Institute and faculty members at COA, Todd Little-Siebold, who's our history professor at COA, and Natalie Springle, who teaches at COA and is a Maine Sea Grant extension agent. Four folks from those organizations taught this class that really framed out the backbone of the work that we continue doing from 2017 until now. That first course in that first iteration, the students at COA were going out into communities, and they started to interview fishermen, engage with fishermen, and collect stories from local communities. If you don't know, College of the Atlantic is a college based in Bar Harbor, and there are a ton of rural communities in that area that have a rich, rich fishing history. And one of the things that the instructors at the time noticed, some of our founders noticed, was that there were a lot of students who really wanted to engage with that local community and engage in local storytelling. So that very first class, they went to Winter Harbor, they went to Southwest Harbor, did a bunch of interviews with local fishermen. And it was really inspiring to both the teachers and instructors, but also to the students. And at that point, I lectured in that class. I've done a lot of community work, community storytelling work. So I was a lecturer. And then in 2020, I came on board as part of the Mapping Ocean Stories team officially. And Laurie, I think it was 2022 when you joined COA, or 2021. You can correct that when you speak, but Laurie Baker came on as another leader of the project. So Mapping Ocean Stories started as a course at COA and really organically turned into a project that now is ongoing. It's ongoing work that we do with students. Every year we have a cohort that we keep working with. We have student workers, and we have a collection of classes that are oriented to community storytelling, data analysis that's engaging with interviews, and audio storytelling, and also some fisheries history work. So the goals of the Mapping Ocean Stories project include documenting voices, recording interviews, and uncovering archives that honor the perspectives and knowledge from Maine's coastal and fishing communities. We produce and share stories that celebrate Maine's coastal heritage. We produce data and maps from biographical and ecological information collected in interviews, and we connect students to meaningful community-based work. And that has been one of the really, really amazing things about this project, is that it really takes our students into Maine communities, interacting with the issues that are happening and the history that's really happened in these coastal locations. So I want to talk a little bit about Mapping Ocean Stories. We sort of think of it as having these like almost two kind of buckets, although they totally interact with each other. But there's the audio projects, and then there's our mapping projects and our data collection. So I'm going to talk about our students' work archiving interviews, community exhibits and sound walks, the audio storytelling that our students do. So that's podcasts and radio shows, and some of the oral history projects that we've developed within Mapping Ocean Stories, kind of from, we like to say, oral history from tip to tail. So the whole thing, we've got it's from the inception of the idea all the way to getting it to an archival, a place where the oral histories can be archived or even exhibited. And that's one of our big goals. So one of the byproducts of our work with Mapping Ocean Stories is in 2017, we started this work with students, and one of the original ways that we really engaged student workers was to have them transcribing archives that they would find or our team members would find. And at that point, by 2020, I had been doing a little contract work for Mapping Ocean Stories, and some of the work I was doing at that point was just finding archival audio all over Maine. So this is like cassette tapes that historical societies had in the back closet that they hadn't digitized, or audio interviews that a lot of folks had from the 1970s when oral history was a really big thing, and they had never done anything with it, or it was kind of like sitting on a disc somewhere and collecting dust. And we also had a lot of original interviews that I had done as an oral historian all over the coast. And so students started to transcribe those interviews. They started to process them. That's kind of the terminology we use. And we didn't have any place for the interviews to live. So one of the projects that we developed, or one of the projects that we developed really early on in this process, was a website, actually. And just, Jen, if you could just, let me know if you can still see this. that would be helpful because I'm sort of just on a roll right now. So we developed a website called Maine Sound and Story. And this is one of the ways in which our student work can immediately contribute to an oral history archive. So one of the things that we have students working on all the time are transcribing and processing our archives. And Maine Sound and Story, you can see this is the home page. We designed this to be super straightforward, we hope, in that it's pretty simple, but you can access a oral history archive. And for example, we have the Frenchman Bay Oral History Project, which is a project that our students have been working on for a couple years, which I'll be talking about in a moment. And on this site, you can really see it's really easy to navigate to these interviews and oral histories that our students within Mapping Ocean Stories are constantly processing for us. So one of the main things that we have students doing is transcribing, hosting, and processing oral history interviews. They're also conducting oral history interviews, which I will be talking about in a moment. Oh, uh-oh. What happened? Oh, there we go. Sorry, it's like glitching on me. Can anyone?
I think
All
it's
right.
so.
I got it. Got it. I think I got it, right? You can see that? Okay. So Maine Sound and Story is one of the legs of our Mapping Ocean Stories work is we constantly have students who are archiving interviews for us. We also have students who are working on community-based storytelling. So all of the interviews that we are processing and all of the interviews that we're doing in new oral history archives, usually those will then go back to communities as exhibits. So for example, in this slide, two students here, Annika Ross and Celia Morton, they worked on a exhibit that was shown in Stonington for the Deer Isle Stonington community. So this community storytelling work that we do with the Mapping Ocean Stories class, sometimes it's in the form of courses that we teach. We'll have students go into communities and work within communities to make exhibits that they then will show at the end of term, or they're working for a very long time. These two students worked for almost a year and a half on the community exhibits that this community exhibit that they showed in Deer Isle. And we really have kind of an ethos for this community storytelling work. And this really comes from my own work prior to being part of the Mapping Ocean Stories team. But, we really try to keep coming back to a community. So these are all Maine communities. We like to identify folks who can be community point people, someone who we can talk to make sure that the work is reflecting the values of those communities. One of the hardest things for students to do, and one of the biggest learning hurdles, I think, is just building trust in untrusting times. There's a lot of anxiety that people are feeling in the last couple of years, in the last decade, COVID, I mean, you name it, there was a lot of anxiety. And so students really learn to navigate interacting with people from all walks of life and from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. And that's been a really important part of our work. And we also work with a lot of organizations. So we ourselves of Mapping Ocean Stories, we have a ton of organizations, but then we work with historical societies or local historians or fisheries organizations to make these exhibits, just to give them more community buy-in, which feels like a really important part of the work. And we also So for this exhibit, we exhibited at 44 North in Stonington. So we like to work, one of the things we like to do with these exhibits is put them in spaces where people will encounter them. So this exhibit features, and this is kind of typical for some of our Mapping Ocean Stories exhibits that are affiliated with the First Coast, which is the organization I founded. These exhibits are, there are photos, there are audio stories, there are captions, and then recently, this was the first exhibit. If you'll notice on the left-hand side, we have a digital story frame. And this is something that was made in collaboration with Perch Design Studio. They're an interactive software design company here in Portland, and they are really wonderful and helped us figure out a way for folks to be able to access these stories that our students were making really easily. So this is like an interactive touchscreen that you can actually go in, put the headphones on, see the photos, listen to the stories. And it also allows us, because obviously this exhibit is, I think it was 28 photos, and 44 North in Stonington, the cafe, they can't keep it up forever. They kept it up for 2 years, which was really generous. And once we take the photos down, this story frame will stay there, which is really exciting for us. So these exhibits that we've made with students are, we have them for Lubeck, Jonesport, Stonington, Ambar Harbor, and Beals Island. And now with this, we now have the capability to put the stories and the exhibits in those communities for the long term in the format of this story frame. So that's really exciting. So the stories that Annika Ross and Celia Morton made for the Deer Isle exhibit, I want to share one with you. And this is where headphones might come in handy. I'm going to share one that's about the Stonington Cannery. So for this exhibit, Celia and Annika, they worked with over 95 oral history interviews, some that were done by me in 2018, but many that were part of the Deer Isle Stonington Historical Society's collection. And they created from 95 interviews, so you could imagine probably 80 hours of audio. These two students created a audio piece that is 45 minutes in total, and it has these little, we call them chapters. So you actually can access tracks and stories within that 45-minute story. So this is one of those, and it's about the cannery. And just give me one moment because the formatting is a little funny in Zoom. So I'll just get us to the spot. So you can see this is kind of how it would look on the story frame too. You can actually listen and see the photo that accompanies the story. So I'll play this story by Celia Morton and Annika Ross about the sardine cannery in Stonington.
Fish and put them into a teeny tiny can.
Those big boats up
Sorry.
coves around all over the state and take off and go to Canada or wherever, and it was amazing how they did all that.
So in the sardine carriers, sardines period, were a big part of the community also with the fish factory running. My grandmother worked there.
Yep.
A lot of her adult life, and a lot of the older folks here did work here. A lot of, I never did, but a lot of my classmates worked there. That was kind of too bad to see that stop. That was big in all of Maine, I think, quite a bit of Maine.
You go to work before 6, you work until 3, 4, 5 o'clock.
Was it mostly women?
Yeah. The men would bring the fish up into the room and dump them on the table. That's when we packed them. Sometimes we packed, sometimes we just did them in cans.
Did people cut themselves? Did you have?
Oh yes. You cut your on the tin cans. Don't get cut too much on knives with the tin cans, because they're sharp around the top where the lid goes back on.
Well, ladies cut sardines, put them in a little can or a big can. None of them were really big. Some of them were teeny tiny fish and put them into a teeny tiny can.
After they get the sardines in the can and they get the tops on them, they all come down in a bin, and you have to put so many in a box called casing. And that's what I did, the casing. I didn't cut the heads and tails off. Because there'd been probably more fingers than heads.
We did what we could with what we had. When that old boat showed up, we all ran to the window. That must be my husband's. He's got fish for us so we can pack some more fish and get some more money. That's what we were saying. A whole bunch of us would leave our table and go look.
Was it by the hour, or did you make money by how much you pack?
What they packed,
Packed.
girls.
Packed.
It was good and fast. They made money. If they didn't, they didn't.
That's right.
That's hard.
Yep.
Yeah, it certainly was. I'll never forget Eva losing the back of the thumb, her little thumb.
Oh, I can't believe that
Looking, looking for her thumb piece. That she cut her thumb right off, honey, right down to here. And it was bleeding. Here we were looking for it with all that fish and guts and blood and all that stuff. And scooped it down for the betas over there.
Okay, so yeah, that's one of the chapters in that exhibit about the sardine canneries, and these stories, the way that the students usually edit them is to actually have the stories are kind of going into the next story, so you can sit and listen to the whole piece as a 45-minute piece, and it really paints a lovely story about the community. And it's not only historical, like some of the folks are talking about what's happening now and also talking about what was happening many years ago. We also have another most recent exhibit. So as I said, we've had exhibits in Lubec, Jonesport, Beals Island, Stonington, and Bar Harbor. One of the most recent exhibits that is still on display at the Bar Harbor Historical Society. This was created by COA student Camden Hunt, Tegan Polson, and Katie Culp. And with my help, I'm usually the mentor on these projects. And you can see in this exhibit, we have 2 story frames by Perch. So there's actually 4 listening stations, and all of the exhibits feature QR codes also. So if you went in with a phone, you could scan and listen to the individual stories. But I wanted to play just one of these stories from this exhibit. And I think this kind of, paired with the Deer Isle exhibit, it really shows how this work is really tailored to the community that it is about. So the stories come from the archive or the interviews that we have, and we really try to create exhibits that evoke a feeling of the identity of the place that they're from. So here we'll go to another one of these stories, this time from Josh Kane, who's a young lobsterman in Bar Harbor.
Well, Bar Harbor was a pretty good little town when 1 million people used to come here. That sounds like a lot, but it was a manageable number. There was traffic, but it was reasonable. And now there's 3 million. And I don't know when that increase started, but I believe that we've jumped up within the last 10 years to 3 million people. Like, we can't sustain that here. It's not good for the town. You can't even go to a grocery store. It used to be like maybe June to October. Now it's April to almost December. And it's like people, they don't leave anymore. Town used to be empty after October. And, there's never a time when town's quiet anymore. I don't know what Bar Harbor is anymore. It's just a tourist mecca, really. It's not a community in the sense that it was, I don't think. Maybe I don't involve myself enough or try to make it that, but it's not the community that I knew. So, I try to just keep the ones that are in my life close that I want in my community now, as opposed to being part of a larger community, which is sad because, it was a great place. Like I said, everyone knew everybody. And also, if you were walking down the street, somebody knew who you were, so if you did something wrong, there's that Kane boy or Pinkham boy or whatever. It was a lot closer. And everybody had a position in town. If somebody worked at the bank, that was their job, and they'd been there for 25 years. I mean, I'm speaking loosely. It wasn't all like that, but, it was more like that than not. And, like I said, my uncles were at all the departments, and they were career people. Our bus drivers were career bus drivers. I had a gym teacher that taught my mother, me, and wound up teaching my daughter right before he retired.
So again, that's from the exhibit that we have in Bar Harbor at the Bar Harbor Historical Society. I want to touch on a few more things that we produce and the students produce as part of the Mapping Ocean Stories project. All of these community exhibits are also accompanied by a sound walk. So we have sound walks, and I'll explain a little bit about what that is, but we have sound walks in Lubec, Jonesport, Beals Island, Bar Harbor, and Stonington. These images that you see on the screen are actually postcards. So you can go to the Jonesport Historical Society, grab one of these Jonesport Sound Walk postcards, and on the back side, it has a QR code to scan and some instructions. And these are self-contained audio stories that take you throughout the town. So the Stonington Soundwalk, you start at 44 North and you're guided by a narrator to walk around town, and you hear stories from that town, from interviews, and also you're invited to sort of take part in the landscape itself and think about environmental change, think about fisheries change. They're a really wonderful way for us to engage the audience and the listener with the environment and with changes that are happening in these towns that you can perceive. And one of the things, so Camden Hunt created a sound walk for Bar Harbor. One of the things I really love about sound walks is that you're not only invited to listen to, sometimes we'll invite you to listen to sounds in the environment, but other times also you may hear sounds and stories about different times of different seasons, different time periods. And so it's a really nice way from like a cultural heritage perspective, cultural heritage tourism perspective, for us to engage folks who don't live in Maine and who are visiting, and they can listen to these and really get an understanding of the place that they're in and some of the history. So I'm just going to play a brief excerpt from Camden's Sound Walk. Well, maybe I will. Okay.
I guess we have to talk about winter. I've been avoiding it somehow, some way. Maybe because I'm writing this while it's snowing outside and more fun to imagine the summer, but almost to our stop at the intersection of Main Street and Cottage Street, we need to talk about it.
And if you don't mind fighting the elements, the park is like a great big backyard with no one except people you know in it. So you might hike or snowshoe all day in January if all the weather conditions are just right and not see another soul. And that is part of the joy of living here.
You should be at our next stop now, the corner of Main Street and Cottage Street, labeled number 7 on your map. It's a good idea to find a place on the street here to hang back, as this area can be busy. If you're listening in the summer, you are probably barely able to find a place to stand and listen to me. In the winter, my friends and I play a game, taught to me by someone who grew up here. How long can we walk down Main Street in the center of the road before we have to move to the side for a car? Sometimes, you can make it all the way from the edge of town to the water, one long, cold walk.
I think you find some people who are like kind of closing up and, being more tucked in and sometimes more bitter about the visitors who come here. And then I think it kind of depletes us so that in the winter we have maybe less of a fabric to be knit together, because we're all just like hunkered down in the dark, most of us drinking. I mean, like, yeah, I feel like it's hard to find that balance as you see more and more things happening and taking off in the summer. I think it's harder for the community to just actually be well-rounded and healthy.
At first, I thought this walk down Main Street was sort of fun, evidence of a town that gets to rest in the off-season. The longer I've lived here, the more I think the town only appears to rest. We're going to continue walking down Main Street towards the fountain in the same direction we've been going. On the way, you'll hear from David Payne and Chris Peterson about the nature of towns and
So that gives you an idea of just kind of how sound walks work. So you're hearing stories, you're navigating, you have a map, and you're actually walking through space and listening to some of the ideas that are being presented. I also, before turning this over to Laurie, just wanted to touch on a couple other projects that students do and that we mentor them through as part of Mapping Ocean Stories. Maine Sea Grant is a partner of Mapping Ocean Stories. They have a WERU show called Coastal Conversations. WERU is the community radio station in Down East Mid-Coast, Maine, based in Orland. And students have produced 30-minute radio broadcast shows for Coastal Conversations about Maine's sardine canneries, about Maine's farming industry, seaweed harvesting and kelp farming, and urchin diving. And it's been a really wonderful way for our students to gain practical broadcasting experience and to work with a local radio station and get some of these stories heard by the local communities where they are doing the reporting. And so passing the baton to Laurie, who is going to talk more about the data collection aspect of our projects and the spatial mapping aspects of our project, I wanted to just mention again the Frenchman Bay Oral History Project. This is really, this project you can find on Maine Sound and Story. We've been doing it for almost 3 years now. And it's a really great example of the first Mapping Ocean Stories oral history project that we took from tip to tail. So this project started as an idea. It actually started, Frenchman Bay is the bay that's adjacent to Bar Harbor. And in around the time period right before when we started this project, there was a salmon farm that was proposed in that bay, and that really that was really the inspiration for our students to I had a fisherman say to me, I wish someone knew what we used the bay for. And this was really the inspiration for this project, which our students went out and found a bunch 22 different residents who live and work on Frenchman Bay to interview them in long form oral history interviewing about their use of the bay over time, fisheries that they have participated in, or local ecological knowledge that they had. And then the students have transcribed and actually analyzed those interviews, which Laurie can speak more to kind of get a sense of what is this area used for. And this project really exemplifies what Mapping Ocean Stories is about, because there's the oral history component. We are going to be producing an exhibit for the summer of 2026, and that exhibit will include not only stories but also more of the mapping and data collection that Laurie Baker is going to talk about next. So I'll hand it to you, Laurie.
Question for you while Laurie's pulling that up. Would you let us know how other members of the community, and I know you work with students a lot, but how can other community members become involved in the project?
Yeah, I guess I'd be curious in what specific way. We love to have folks, obviously one way is just like, we have a lot of folks who suggest or want to be interviewed. So they have suggestions for folks that we should interview, and then, or maybe they want to be interviewed. I think simply dropping an email to us we can provide contact details and anything if folks are interested in being involved. There's like so many various ways you could be. So like it's like what are the specific avenue? But there's definitely a lot of avenues to be involved in the work. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you good, Laurie?
I think so. So you were saying go into
Up at the top right, hit slideshow.
all right, perfect.
Yeah.
Good. All right. You wouldn't know that I teach computer programming. All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much. So, yeah, as mentioned, I was at College of the Atlantic, which is where I got involved in this project. I'm now based at Bates College, where I teach data science and statistics. But my path to data science and statistics actually was through marine biology, which is what I did my undergraduate and master's in. So I've always had a big connection to Maine and the water. And one of my interests is in how you can sort of draw out data and patterns and take a look at it. So Galen talked a little bit about the history of the project. Early on in that first class, they developed the mapping component, interviewing folks also with charts, and a big goal was to identify infrastructure, names of places, local fishing grounds, like where people sort of used use the area, and so it was a big portion of the project. Since I became involved in 2022, we've sort of looked even broader, making it from like a Mount Desert Island historical fisheries atlas to a Gulf of Maine historical fisheries atlas. And one of the things that is really exciting is that we've also been actually working with some of those archives that Galen mentions of older transcripts, where maybe the narrator is no longer alive, but we still wanted to pick out the spatial information and some more of the coastal use through there. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that as well. Um, so we wanted to create maps that reflect the biographical and also ecological insights gathered from community interviews. What you're seeing here is an example of a chart after we've conducted an interview. You'll notice that there's little numbers. We're looking at Frenchman Bay here. College of the Atlantic is right sort of on the side of Mount Desert Island. And a lot of people have stories that are tied to place, and we've been capturing that as we've gone. So some of the things that we're also doing is recording key data, so including who was doing the activity, what the activity was, where, and also when it occurred. And then documenting important infrastructure, local names, and also histories of places. So we've created a hub site, and I'll be able to demo this in a little bit more detail. But essentially it's a ArcGIS Online, which is a geographic information system platform. And our goal was to create a place where we could record local names of places, also add new locations. So we've been mainly working with a lot of the kind of coastal data that if you spend time navigating on the water, you might be using NOAA charts. There's also a big database from the GNIS, which I'm forgetting exactly what it stands for, but it's like the Geographic Something Information System. But we wanted to also identify locations mentioned in oral history transcripts. Some of the challenges there is that a lot of people use local names, a lot of people use nicknames of places. You'll know sort of if you're around in an area, people will have different names for things. And so we wanted to create some ways to identify where those locations were. We also have done a lot of work digitizing spatial data from the biographical mapping interviews. So we've done this both with paper charts. We've also done it now with tablets. We have tablets where people can sort of trace over an area. And we also have a lot of students who are very good with technology, who can assist folks as well. And a big part of it is wanting to share stories and also data with the community and document that spatial use also as part of Maine's heritage. So this is a short video just giving a little bit of an introduction to the hub site. So what you can see at the top is we've got data entry, learning, explore, showcase. We've added some other sort of tabs more recently, but you can read a little background on the project, and you can go to different areas to learn a little bit about where we are. So what we're showing now is the spatial glossary. You can turn off and on different layers. So we've got islands. We also have locales and places. You can click on any of those places and it will have like an ID that's special to it. It'll show if there's a database that it's from. And it will also show the name of the island and some other things. There's also places to explore the content. So we've got a place where you can query and also download the data, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But when we collect spatial information, we're usually collecting it. It's either a point, a line, or a polygon, depending on sort of the nature of the data. And then we also have a spot where we show both past and current work that we're doing. So there's a lot of pieces to it, but we wanted to have a platform there we could collect, learn, and also share insights. So that's an overview of the hub site. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we code the transcripts for activities. So the easiest way to do this is connecting what we call a biographical mapping interview. That's where you interview someone, but you also interview them with a map as well. And this is really nice because you can ask follow-up questions to the person. You can also have them indicate different areas. And so in the screenshot you're seeing on the side here, this is showing some of those biographical maps. The colors in this case don't really have significance. It's just two different students that digitize this, but you can see different areas around Eastern Passage, off of Bass Harbor. You can see some areas around the Cranberry Isles. And what you'll notice is that we both have kind of areas of polygons that are digitized, and then you can imagine for like a boat track, that's more likely going to be a line. We also have areas around the island that are indicating where shrimp tows used to happen, and then also specific locations as well. We then use our spatial glossary to locate places. So there's a number of places that there could still be disagreement, but generally if you talk maybe about a particular sort of area where people moor their boats, everyone will sort of agree on sort of where that area is. But you can also have places that are distinct just to one individual. And I'm going to talk a little bit more too about how we pick out the spatial information from transcripts from oral history archives and show a digital tool that I've created to aid in that process. So this is going to show a little bit of the spatial data editor and just what it looks like when someone is digitizing. So usually what we'll do is we can turn on the NOAA chart as a backdrop. This is also what someone is seeing as they're recording their information. And when we go into digitize, if it's an area, you're going to be making a sort of series of points, and you can mark out sort of exactly where someone has indicated the location. So we can sort of map out that area. It'll automatically assign a spatial ID to that area, and then we can add some more information about sort of what the activity was, who was doing the activity, and that helps us later when we go to query it. So then in the next slide is the spatial glossary. So what's been kind of cool in this project, I grew up sailing in the Harris Secret River in Freeport, kind of similar to what the boats that Captain Jim Sharp was showing before. The opties weren't there when I was a kid, but we went out on JY15s and then on 420s and had a great time. So I grew up sailing, grew up looking at charts. I never really thought about the process of like how those names or those areas kind of came to be. And what's been really fun about this project is I'll show in a moment, but you're actually able to access like the NOAA database of places and also the GNIS database of places. And it's been really neat sort of working with those data sources, but also knowing that there's things to add to them that aren't captured because they might be sort of more unofficial. So this is showing that spatial glossary. You can actually type in and search for a place name. So here we're looking for Bald Rock, which is a rock off of Bar Harbor. And you'll notice that a number of sort of different places will come down. You have options for islands. You also have options for ledges. And anyone that's ever seen a long island in Maine knows that there's many long islands in Maine, and it can be difficult to locate. This bald rock that's just near College of the Atlantic, we have an entry for, and you'll also see that there's an area to add alternative names and sources, dates, and also notes. So in this particular case, Bald Rock is called, at least locally, burnt toast, because it looks like a burnt piece of toast. And so you can go down and add in your name for places, and record that as well. Some people call it burnt toast. Some people call it burnt toes is also also heard. So you can go and enter in an alternative name. And we haven't sort of fully kind of rolled this out yet, but one of the places that I'd really be interested in engaging younger folks is with like the Eastern Maine Skippers program. I think it'd be a really nice way to work with students that are in high school who grew up in coastal communities, and their family, their friends are going to have a lot of really interesting stories and interesting places. So there is also some motivation for capturing those local names, which is when we get to historical archives, it's going to make it a little easier to pick out locations as well. And I'll show sort of how we're doing that. We also have a place that you can query and also filter the data. And this allows people to explore public live data. You can filter specific data and also download and analyze the data if you'd like to use it for different things. One of the things that we've been very mindful of is that when we conduct the biographical mapping interviews, people actually have a lot of options in terms of whether they want to show an exact location or whether they want to show something at a more aggregate level. No one wants to give away like a good fishing ground or their trade secrets. And so there's different ways people can also just present their data at like not quite like a bay level, but sort of a smaller level as well. So working with the archives and Maine Sound and Story. So Galen showed you Maine Sound and Story. one of the things that we did in my data classes was look at the breakdown of where those collections are from. And I know that Galen, we need to update this because Galen has since added a lot of great interviews from Haystack. But if we look just at the breakdown of the interviews, there's quite a few from historical societies. So here in this figure, you have a count along the x-axis. So you can see that from Deer Isle, Stonington Historical Society, we've got just over like 70 interviews. Voices of the Maine Fishermen's Forum is another place where we have a lot of interviews. Galen and Natalie Springle conducted a number of interviews back in 2021, Galen, or when were the
It
fishermen?
was 2018 and 2019 that those interviews were conducted.
Yeah, so 2018, 2019. There's a number from the Tides Institute, Sea Times Jonesport Historical Society. And then you'll notice like the Frenchman Bay Oral History Project that Galen mentioned. We've got just over sort of 20 interviews. More have been added this past summer. And so we can sort of see a little bit of a breakdown of the archive. So in total, there's 500 oral histories from historical societies, the First Coast, which is the project that Galen led, and then a number of student-led interviews. We can also look down a little at the breakdown of the archive. So we have interviews kind of going back 1970s to present. In 1970, if you have interviewed a 80-year-old or a 70-year-old, that's then going back another 70 years, so to kind of early 1900s. So there's really a lot of knowledge contained in the archive, and there's a lot of really interesting sort of heritage and coastal use and stories that folks have. So one of the things we wanted to do was kind of bring out some of that spatial data using text analysis. And so this is actually a tool that I've created. I'm just going to kind of walk through it a little bit more. So Josh Kane, who Galen shared a clip earlier in the presentation, he was born in Bar Harbor, lived on Mount Desert Island his whole life. Born in the mid 80s. He talks in his interview a lot about lobstering, shrimping, scalloping, and also halibut fishing on Frenchman Bay and changes he's seen. So this is one of the interviews that's been done with the Frenchman Bay project. This is showing a little bit of the transcript. So it has sort of this description and metadata at the start, and then we have each speaker identified with initials. And then you'll see as you go through the transcript, you have sort of what each person is saying at different times. So what's kind of neat about it is that we have some structured text. We can identify the speaker before the the colon, and then we can sort of look at what they're saying. So one of the things that we made is a tool that allows you to upload one of these transcripts, and then it's designed to help you pick out locations. Whoops, I'm just going to jump back over to here. I'm going to pause it real quick. All right, so you can put in a PDF link. It'll break down the text. So what you're seeing here just in the table is you got initials, you've got the text, timestamp, and then we've created columns for extracted locations, extracted species, gear, activity, time, and other things. We're still sort of refining it, but one of the things that I want to mention is those extracted locations. So I'll play just a teeny bit more. Whoops, and going to, sorry, jumping around. I could just show the tool online. I'm just going to pause there for a second. So using the database of names from NOAA and also the GNIS, as well as local names that people mentioned, we can actually put those all into like a search and extract those locations. So we can see Josh is mentioning Bar Harbor, he's mentioning Frenchman Bay. There's some places that are a little bit trickier to pick up, so it'll be hard to read in this, but you can see that he's referring to Sheep and Long. Those are the Porcupine Islands off of Bar Harbor, and then Bar Island. So one of the things that it can be tricky is sort of how people refer to places in speech is not going to be like the official sort of way that they come out, and so we're continually adding to it. We're also picking out species and picking out different years. So all of this is trying to help us as we're putting together data of like who, what, where, and when things happened, and to aid in the processing. So I'll just show a little bit more. So you can see we've got sheep and porcupine there. But there's also ways that you can edit the actual thing, and you can add some other locations as well. So for instance, like Skilling's River was also mentioned but not pulled out. So in terms of where we are now, we have about 100 of the Maine Sounding Story interviews coded, and 23 biographical mapping interviews digitized. These are largely around Frenchman Bay, which is sort of why you see the locations here identified. What's really neat and what Galen spoke about is that we have fishermen, we have biologists. So some of those large areas that you're seeing there, those are places where people see whales. And then we also have aquaculturists and a lot of different coastal users. And we're still very early on in the process, but my hope is that we will start to build and continue to build a spatial database where we can really look back and look sort of forwards at how things have changed over time, and especially I think with the rise and fall of different fisheries, those things will become more apparent as well. So I'll finish by thanking everyone for coming out tonight to hear our talk, and really special thanks to our collaborators, Natalie Springle at Maine Sea Grant, Todd Little-Seabold at College Atlantic, and Nick Batista at the Island Institute. Ilham Santoso, who's been working with me on creating the GIS website, and really countless students. We've had a lot of students through our courses. There's a number of links here. The Linktree Mapping Ocean Stories will take you to a lot of these, but there really is, this is a project with sort of many outputs and many pieces. And so, yeah, thank you. And yeah, Galen, anything you want to add before we open it up to questions?
No, thanks so much, Laurie. It was great. It's always fun for me to even though I know all the data stuff that's going on, it's like always fun for me to see it. It's great. Yeah. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, a lot of info. It's a Zoom. It's late, but oh, Jen, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Where can folks see you guys around the Rockland area? Are there, I mean, do you have anything at the Island Institute here, or a story frame, or?
No, we're trying to figure out a story frame to put a story frame in Archipelago. They're challenging because they need a wall, which is like they need to be installed. So if we put one in Archipelago, we can send you a note about it and you can share it with folks. Yeah. The closest story frame to you all is 44 North in Stonington and Deer Isle. Both their locations have story frames. And we will have one in Portland at the Walk the Working Waterfront event. It's actually a rare event that we're going to be a part of, because the folks who put it on were kind of the the original funders of some of our stuff. So we love them. The Waterfront
Great.
Alliance in Portland. Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much. And thank you for sharing your stories with us tonight.
Thank you. And yeah, we can send links and stuff if people want to check it out at a later date.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Actually. So with the data that's being extracted, like the places, the activities, and apologies if I missed it, but how does that, or will it at some point get like reintegrated back so that like if you wanted to hear all the interviews that mention Frenchman's Bay, for example, is that something that's going to be sort of incorporated in that?
Yeah, so I know on Maine Sound and Story there is a way to search for like kind of
Yeah.
topics and stuff for interviews. We'll probably we do have recorded for like the spatial data, like what interview it came from, and so can tie it back, but it'll probably be mainly through one thing is it's hard to find a platform that can like do it all with like the audio and the mapping pieces. So there's a way to sort of link it into integrate it, but they'll probably
Well,
just
Laurie, I'll just
bit.
say, yeah, because I didn't show. It's too much. It was too much to show in this presentation. I didn't go into Maine Sound and Story too much, but that if you go to that website and you go to search the archive, you can search by keyword, you can search by phrase, you can pull up a transcript. So if you went into Maine Sound and Story, we have PDFs, we have text transcript, much like Laurie just showed. It's the whole transcription. Every audio story has a transcription, and that's super important for researchers. So you can actually go in and be like, I want to look up Frenchman Bay or this specific place and enter it in, and then that will get pulled up in the search feature. So that's something, yeah, that it's hard for, we have so many things going on, so it's hard to like show the nitty gritty of everything when we're doing presentations.
This is a very comprehensive, like all-encompassing project. It's fascinating. I'm looking forward to digging around the website and seeing what all's out there.
Yeah, I think being in both of us, are in the college, and now Bates has joined our team. We need like a Bates little logo for Laurie. But yeah, I think being in an academic space and being with students too, there's so much generative, they're generating so many ideas all the time. And so it just keeps, it's really wonderful. We get to just keep getting more and more ideas and more things happening.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And we are looking forward to seeing your ideas and can't wait to re-engage with your work.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Thanks,
you. Captain Jim.
Thank you. I'm going to sneak in. There we go. ID. Very interesting. And all that technology. My God. If you want something more down to earth, I've got a little book here that you'll have to check out. These are my memoirs. This is 50, 60 years of sailing vessels and that kind of all stories of all kinds of places in the world. And all these voyages and different kind of things, and some of it's even true. It's a great book to get started with if you want to have a nice evening before the fire. Just look astern on all of the programs we've done, the captain's quarters we've done. Look down through the list there, and you'll see all the different schooners: the Roseway, the Angelique, the Victory Chimes, the Louis R. French American Eagle, and so on. You look down there, you'll find your favorite sailing vessel there, and it'll tell about its history and so on and so forth. Those are the ones that we've done, and here are the ones that we are doing recently, a little more recently. You can see down at April 8th, April 15th, Mapping the Ocean Stories, and we have one more coming up April 22nd. It's the Old Snow Shipyard Part 3. We've done Part 1 and Part 2, and this is Part 3. One of the most prolific shipyards in the nation back at that time, back when Rockland was the 4th largest seaport in the United States. It'll give you an awful great idea, great glimmer of what went on back in the late 1800s in Rockland. Rockland was a very, very busy place at that time. I want to thank you all for coming. And if you have anything else to add, please do it now. We couldn't do this without you. And certainly join our museum. Donations are more encouraged. And we certainly are happy that you came and joined us tonight. So we'll call it tonight. If there are any other comments, please jump right in. Speak right up. Thunderous applause. Thunderous applause. Great program we've had. Good night, Captain Jen. You take care.
Good night.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.